Hi there, welcome to an episode or a masterclass actually on an introduction to AI. Hopefully you're here because you're hearing of all of the crazy things that are happening in the world of AI at the moment. There's a lot going on. It's a lot of noise. I mean, even somebody myself who is really into the AI space, I feel completely bombarded all the time by what's going on in the actual industry. But that's why you're here, because we're going to teach you a sort of introduction to AI, what you should focus on, what you should cut through the noise, so that hopefully by the time you finish this masterclass, you have a bit more of an understanding of exactly what is going on in the space. So we're going to start with a presentation. Just a bit of background. My name is Trenton Birch. I run an organization called Future School. We are a leading higher education provider. We also have we have higher certificates, we have all kinds of courses, and then we have a branch of Future School called Future School AI, where we basically teach AI. So more about that as we go along. In terms of my background, I've been in education for over 15 years. From a creative media school background. I used to run a creative media school, and I've been very involved in the sort of tech space for many years. I've been lecturing futurism for over 5 years, and have taken a real deep fascination and interest in AI and its opportunity to really make the world a better place and to improve the general human condition. I'm going to bring in my co-host, who's also going to be doing some stuff for us. Alex, hello, welcome. Nice to see you.
Hi there, Trenton, and hi there, everyone. Great to be here. I'm Alex Pryor. I have had over 20 years in the technology industry. I'm an emerging technology specialist, and one of my focus areas right now, obviously, is AI and how that impacts organizations and how you can really use AI to make more profit, do more in less time, and beyond that, really how it impacts people, impacts the job market. So very excited to be here today to tell you a little bit more about AI, and hope that you learn something with Trenton and myself, and certainly hope that you will be back for more of our classes, because we've got an amazing set of masterclasses planned that we're very excited about.
Awesome, Alex. We'll see you back in a sec. Thanks so much for that. Yes, we've just started this series. We've done a few masterclasses so far, but lots of stuff coming up, including a summit, which we're running, a big masterclass summit. We'll unpack that later. We've got a lot to get through. It's very difficult to do an introduction to AI in 1 hour, so hang on to your seats. Let's get straight into it. So listen, what is AI and how did we actually get here? Essentially, the AI is a simulation of intelligence. Okay, so artificial intelligence is a simulation of human intelligence by machines, enabling them to perform complex tasks. Some of the core capabilities: they can learn, reason, problem solve, understand language, and perceive their environment, especially when we talk about embodied AI and humanoids, which we'll touch on later. It's important to understand that as it is at the moment, AI doesn't think or feel. Although we'll unpack that there's definitely a part in the evolution of AI where we think that might happen. I really like this unpacking of AI. It's from ex-chief decision scientist at Google, Casey Coscroft, who actually has South African roots. And I stole this from her slides because I think it really paints a nice, clear picture of what AI can actually do. So I love this. It's an automation improver. It can help you automate things. It's an approachable interface. I don't know if any of you have been speaking to your AI, but it's really approachable, easy to use. Amplified imagination. You can take anything you have in your mind and you can amplify it. For those of you who are creative, it's an incredible opportunity to take these ideas and concepts that you might have had to pitch into, proper serious designers, and now you can, let yourself loose with all kinds of creative stuff. It's an advice integrator. At the moment, learning language models, one of the biggest utilizations of learning language models are people are using it for advice and guidance and all kinds of weird and wonderful stuff. And it's augmented individuals. So these augmented things that sit in the cloud. So these, I think, unpack it in a different kind of way, because we're always very focused on artificial intelligence. This is kind of a softer way of describing what some of the implications and what some of the actual rollouts of it are. But let's just get this straight. So AI is not a new concept, okay? It originally comes from Hollywood. So anyone who's seen a Hollywood movie, your vision of the future and what you imagine it to be comes from Hollywood. Some of these movies you may remember, but these are concepts that we've been playing with for decades and decades. And now the time has arrived. So it's a very exciting, fast-moving pace. But in terms of the way AI is moving, so there are some people who say that it's moving about every 5 months. it's doubling. There are some people that say it's about every 3 months. It depends on who you speak to. But the reason I want to showcase this is just to give you an understanding of how fast this is moving. For some of you, it might be a bit more technical. There's a term about a concept called Moore's Law, which was in effect for 50, 60 years. They said that every 2 years, technology doubled. You can see that line is on the bottom, the yellow line. In terms of it, doubling every 5 months, that is the line. So Moore's law is completely gone out of the window, and this is the kind of pace we're looking at. So if we go at this kind of pace, if we actually look at how powerful AI will be in 5 years, okay, if we take it over 5 months, so it doubles every 5 months, it will be 4,096 times more powerful. However, if we take it at 3.3 months, which a lot of people, especially the hype people, are talking about, it will be 297,000 more times more powerful. So these are, two different variations. This is obviously compounding, like compound interest, but it just shows you the exponential growth that's happening in this space. So this is a space you have to be on top of if you want to survive and thrive. But these are the kind of numbers. And just in terms of the kind of money that's going in, I mean, there's huge money going into this space at the moment. 109 billion has been put in the US AI sort of industry last year. China was 9.3 billion, the UK 4.5 billion. They're spending 3 trillion on data centers, and there's just been a big deal with OpenAI, SoftBank, and Oracle to put 500 billion in. OpenAI have just done a deal with Amazon Web Services. So, I mean, literally every day someone is doing a deal to really drive this forward. The point is there's a large amount of money going into this because this is probably the biggest technical revolution of our time, and I think will be. A few buzzwords. So some of you may have heard some of these terms. Vibe coding. So for those of you who are not technical, that's the beauty about AI. The technical industry used to be for techies, people who sat behind computers and programmed away. You don't need to be able to program to actually create apps, create all kinds of things, websites, etc. So vibe coding is essentially when you are programming or you are creating an app or a website by actually using AI. So all the coding is done in the back, and you sit there and vibe it out. So that's quite a common term. AI slop is something which I think everyone needs to be super aware of. There's a lot of AI slop. AI slop is essentially when people are just using AI to write their emails, using fancy words that they might not even understand. And basically the churn of all of this mass sort of marketing media that all sounds and looks the same. And that's going to be a big problem and something that we've got to all be aware of. Prompt engineering, you may have heard about prompting. It is all in the prompting. There was a time when, there was talk about studying prompt engineering, but now you can just get AI to prompt for you. But prompting is absolutely everything. The way to look at a lot of AI systems is they are junior. They don't have any knowledge necessarily. So the more you can educate them, the more information you can give them, the more prompt and direction you can give them, the better the result. We then get hallucination. Alex is going to unpack it a bit later, but essentially it's sort of ChatGPT, Gemini, etc., trying to please you or coming back with weird suggestions or incorrect information. LLMs are large language models, ChatGPT being probably the biggest at the moment. And then guardrails are essentially the values and the guardrails put in to the learning management systems in terms of values, in terms of, if you ask ChatGPT to tell you how to make an atomic bomb, it will not do that because it has guardrails. And then vaporware, that's just all the hype when something comes out in terms of it being this huge buzz, and then the actual software never gets released. So those are a few buzzwords. In terms of where we're at in the cycle, and this is debatable depending on who you speak to, but essentially the Gartner hype cycle is designed for the technology sort of booms that happen. The peak of inflated expectations, I think we've kind of over that, and there's a bit of a trough of disillusionment at the moment. There's been a lot of hype. There is negativity around AI at the moment in terms of its capabilities. So we're somewhere along there, but that typically is how it happens. And then everything bottoms out and, the bubble, as they say, will burst. I don't believe the bubble will burst fully. I believe it'll be a little pop and a little bit of a deflation, but there's way too much money and way too much acceleration in this for it to be a full burst. But certainly as we come out of that slope and out of that disillusionment and that confusion, all of a sudden the productivity will start to ramp up. I think it's also important for any of you running businesses. Martech's law essentially is about, technology moves at rapid speed, but generally organizations move at a logarithmic level, which means they're much slower. And if you don't catch up and keep up with the amount of technology changes, you essentially get left behind. And that's what's going to happen in businesses. I don't mean to be a scaremonger here, but the reality is those businesses that do not adopt AI will eventually die. There's just absolutely no doubt in my mind that that's going to be the case. Let's quickly unpack the different types of AI. So just from a very high level, because I know this can be super confusing, but essentially, we get narrow and weak AI. So one of the things to understand is that most of us are using AI, whether we know it or not. So narrow AI is super focused on a specific task. So Google Translate is one. I mean, ChatGPT, if you're just using it for text generation, can be considered narrow AI, Face ID recognition, but it's very, very specific to a certain thing. And we've been using narrow AI for many, many years. It's very specialized to some particular task. We then get limited memory or reasoning AI. Okay, and this is something like autonomous vehicles. So they learn, they pick up stuff, they can adapt, but you can't ask, so a great example of this is autonomous vehicles. So they are continually learning, but they are focused on one specific thing with capacity. So you can't ask, limited memory or reasoning AI to, give you a sort of a recipe for pancakes. It's focused in one particular area, but it's not as narrow because it's much more broad-based. Because something like, autonomous vehicles are dealing with regular data coming in all the time and learning. That's a big thing that Tesla have built out, and that's all, the foundation of their AI has come from Tesla and all of their sort of back end. Then there's agentic AI. I'm not going to go too much into this. There's a big buzz about this at the moment. Alex will unpack it a bit more when she comes in. But essentially, agentic AI is a fancy word for agents. And agents are goal-orientated. They can deal with multi-step planning. There are lots of different examples. I mean, the agentic AI is the biggest buzzword at the moment because this is having the biggest impact on potential job losses because of the processing it can do. And there are pros and cons to that, and we'll unpack those as we go along. We then get general AI, or AGI, as we call it. Now, this is where all the buzz is at the moment, because essentially, this is the holy grail. This is essentially when AI becomes super intelligent. And the general consensus is AGI will mean that artificial intelligence is as smart as the smartest human for every single iteration of work. So the smartest scientist, the smartest doctor, the smartest chemist, the smartest architect. And this is a very big tipping point for AGI. There are different iterations in terms of when this will happen. Some people say it may already be here. Some people say 2 years. Some people say 3 years. The general consensus is 2 to 3 years. But this would be a massive breakthrough because essentially artificial intelligence will become smarter than every human being on the planet. So we're heading towards this. We then get a step up from that, which is super intelligence. And this, we're not at that point yet. But essentially, this is when AI becomes able to make decisions. It can have emotional intelligence. And again, that's debatable. But at this point, we really feel that super intelligence AI could really help us reshape civilization. So this is quite a big one. And then we have other kinds of AI on top, theory of mind, which is emotional intelligence, understanding intentions, and a lot of future applications that will come with that. And then we have self-aware AI. We're nowhere near this at the moment. No one's come close to this. But essentially, this is when AI becomes conscious, becomes sentient. Ray Kurzweil said that this would happen in 2045. That was many, many years ago. He's a big futurist. That has obviously changed. I think this will happen sooner. But no one knows what or where, how this is going to happen. And there's a lot of hype around AI. Like I'm exhilarated and I'm terrified at the same time. I flip-flop between the two different sides. But these essentially are the different types of AI. The most important are agentic AI, narrow AI, and then artificial general intelligence, AGI. So if you can just remember those, that's enough to give you an understanding of the sort of high-level parts of AI. Why does this matter, guys? Okay, so first of all, as I said earlier, you're using AI integration in your daily lives all the time, okay? And what's important is not to become overwhelmed by what's in front of you. You know, as I said earlier, you know, I'm a fanatic about AI. I read, I watch podcasts constantly and videos, and I feel overwhelmed. You know, so you know, for those of you who are not familiar with it, I can expect that to be a big thing. But what's important to understand is that, firstly, all of the software that is coming out, the AI programs, are very easy to use. You know, so we don't really teach how to use specific. We do teach the basics like ChatGPT, but once you've understood one learning language model, you then can pretty much use them. You don't have to spend days and months and hours on courses learning how to unpack, you know, Dreamweaver or Photoshop or all these complex pieces of software. This is a lot easier. So what's important is to declutter and not to sort of worry too much about the noise. And the general consensus is, at the moment, is that AI is not going to take your job, okay, yet. Okay, we'll get to that. But somebody who understands AI will. You know, we're busy recruiting for some staff at the moment, and we've made it. They have to be AI literate. So being AI literate is super, super important. There are different phases to this integration. The first phase is that someone will take your job if you don't understand AI. The second phase is there will be job losses in terms of AI. And we'll unpack that a bit later on in the masterclass. Right, I think I'm going to hand you over to Alex, who's going to take you through an overview of the current different categories, because this for me is the gold in terms of the categories of different AI tools, because there's lots of tools within those categories. But if you understand the categories, it really, really helps make it much easier. Alex, over to you.
Great. Trenton, thank you so much. So when we're thinking about different AI tools and categories, we're really thinking in three different topics. And these sound scary. You know, large language models, generative tools, generative AI, agents. And it can be very, very confusing. But the thing to remember is that AI isn't magic. It's just pattern recognition. So whatever it becomes in the future, right now, all it is pattern recognition. So the easiest way to think of this is, I love to use analogies for explaining these. So a large language model is basically the world's most well-read parrot. It has read everything. It has a lot sitting in its brain. It knows a lot of words, but it doesn't actually understand them. Then you get generative AI. So if we take that as sort of an analogy a little bit to the left, we are going to say that generative AI, if the parrot has all the knowledge in its head, if we switch that around to think about music, if all of those words are actually musical notes, generative AI is a jazz musician. So for those of you who don't listen to jazz musicians often take a song, and in the middle of playing a song that you know, they go off on a tangent and they create something completely new. And that's what generative tools do. They take all of the underlying data, all of the stuff the parrot who's read everything knows, and they mash it together, figuring out what the most likely outcome is based on what you've told it. And it puts it out there. So again, it's not magic, and it doesn't understand what it is telling you. I know it seems like it does. It's amazing what it says these days. But literally all it is doing, whether it is a tool that is going to build an image or whether it is building an email for you, it is literally putting it on word by word and saying, hey, what is the next most likely word that is going to come out and make sense in this context? Which is why you get some weird stuff every so often. And then the last thing is agents. So all agents are really is taking those two tools and putting a computer program on top of it. Literally all it is it's giving them a couple of instructions. So it's saying, dear AI agent, here's your goal, and I want you to take these steps. So research it, iterate it, make some changes, improve it. And it's a cycle that goes around and around and around. But all it is taking the existing tools and adding some logic on top and saying, do this, do this, do this, and repeat, which is really how AI came about in the first place. Now, you might have heard about some scary stuff called neural networks. And this is not the stuff that Elon Musk is trying to put into our brains. This is really how the data scientists and the computer scientists taught AI, inverted commas, taught to think like a human. And all this really means is that they're using a whole bunch of computing power. You'll mention there's GPUs and CPUs. A CPU is what runs your computer. A GPU is a graphics processor that runs your computer games. But actually, it also runs AI because it processes at a very, very fast speed, just like our brains. So what they taught AI to do is basically to layer things. So if we were thinking about how to recognize a face, there's a circle, there's a triangle, there's a sort of rectangle, there are two circles, and it builds on top of it, just like we would. And using those repetitive thought patterns or repetitive loops in terms of an AI, that's how it gets to sound like us. That's how it gets to think like us, even though it's actually just following a certain set of patterns and repeating them over and over and over again. But let's jump into language models. So remember, this is our very, very well-read parrot who knows a lot. And then we're going to take it and we're going to mash it all together to give something new. And this is what your large language models are. They've taken mass amount of underlying data. For a lot of them, they've literally taken the internet, including parts of the internet they probably shouldn't have, which is why there are a lot of lawsuits going on right now. But they've taken the internet and they've trained their models on it. There is a massive amount of data there. And they take all of that and they use it to, depending on what you give it, write content back. So I'm sure most people on this call have probably at least played with an AI or at least done a Google search and seen that actually it's now giving an AI summary at the top. That's what a large language model is. It's going to predict the next word to build up a response that sounds really, really intelligent. There are some things I'm just going to bring in here. I might bring them in a bit later as well. But the thing you need to remember about AI, there are two things. Firstly, garbage in, garbage out. So the better the data, the better the response. The more data and the more good data, the better the response. But you also have to remember that, especially the ones that are trained on the internet, they're trained, yes, on all those lovely scientific articles and all of that very, very well-researched journalism. But they're also trained on the mummy blogs and on the right-wing conspiracy theorists, the left-wing conspiracy theorists. They're trained on absolutely everything you could think of. And that means that for certain topics, they're going to know more than others. So here's the second thing you have to remember about large language models or about ChatGPT or similar. Much like a human, it is a very good bullshitter. Hope you don't mind the language, but it really is, because it's going to give you a response that sounds right, but it's not. Or it's not always, or it's not 100% right. And that's where you've got to be so very careful. It's why at the bottom of each of them, they say AI can make mistakes. What they don't tell you is how often it makes mistakes. Just some interesting stats for a topic that is very well known. So if you ask AI to talk about AI, you're going to get round about a 90% accuracy rating. If you're talking about a topic that doesn't have a lot of underlying information or has a lot of conflicting underlying information, your accuracy is going to go down to 50% or less. So if you are using any kind of AI for research or on something that you are not intimately familiar with, check everything. Because the worst thing that could happen to you is you put it out there going, I'm an expert in this, and it comes back and what you actually put out was complete and utter rubbish. But obviously, when we think about AI, we're not just looking at words. And that's one of the coolest things about it, is that it actually lets all of us who have zero artistic ability become artists. And yes, this is contentious because the actual artists with artistic ability is saying, no, but what about us? And we're still finding that that sort of middle ground between having tools that let people who haven't had access to being able to create, as well as the very legitimate concerns of people saying, I created art, I have now had AI trained on my art, everyone is creating knockoffs of my art. Likewise, there are a lot of lawsuits going on here. But for an individual, we can now say, instead of going and saying, I want to create a video for my website, I don't have to go and create a brief and find a studio and send it through and wait months and get it back and pay an absolute fortune Instead, I can go off and I can type up a paragraph and chuck it into a tool like Runway, like DALL-E, even like ChatGPT. They've got, for videos, they've got a tool called Sora, and use that to literally in minutes generate a video. Now, this is where prompt engineering, and Trenton mentioned it earlier, this is where it really comes into its full, because you can do it really, really well, and you can do it really, really poorly. But even really, really poorly, it's better than what you probably could have done by yourself. So these are just a couple of tools that that you can use and that you can try out. There's Runway, which is for videos. There's DALL-E, which is really around image generation. There's Pika, there's Synesthesia, which I believe is an audio generator. There's Midjourney, which is the gold standard, although not particularly user-friendly, of image generation. There are so many tools out there, especially if you are a small business. Suddenly it's very accessible to create the sort of content that was previously only available to large enterprises or people with a lot of free cash to spend. And then we get on to agents. So agents and agentic AI, as I say, it's really just giving AI a set of instructions and saying, off you go and do that. So we really talk a lot about virtual assistants here because that's the easiest use case for people to understand. But what it does is saying, you say to your AI tool of choice, and a very good one that you could try out, it's called make.com. You can actually try it out for free, but you can go and you can connect it up to your calendar and you can say, my goal is to only have 3 hours of meetings a week. Go and check my, go and check my calendar, make sure my calendar only ever has 3 hours a week and send me an email to tell me what's going on. And what we'll do is it's going to go out and it's going to say, okay, here's the goal. What do I need to do to get that goal? I'm going to go and research it. What do I need to do then? I need to then check and actually have a look at what I get back out. So it's not just going to give you the responses. It's going to actually edit itself. It's going to check whether it's giving you the best responses. And it can do a lot of things. We talk a lot about repetitive tasks. So this is the sort of stuff that you do over and over and over again. It's why we see a lot of chatbots. It's why we talk about virtual assistants, because I don't necessarily want to check through my calendar every day. I don't want to rejig my calendar. I just want my assistant to send me my list of my calendars, and I want to decline meetings that are not relevant to me. So I can tell it to do that. There are very, very broad applications for this. But what gets interesting, and I'm going to go forward here to AI and enterprise, is when you start taking these and bringing them together. So if I'm thinking, and a very good one for agentic AI is thinking about lead generation marketing. So normally you've got a lead, it comes in, goes into a system, you maybe phone them up, they say yes, they say no, maybe it goes back into a nurture system. What this really does is it takes that sort of workflow and process and puts it on steroids. It takes it and says, okay, cool, we're going to go and we're going to run with this. And I don't have to do very much. I've got to check in every so often to make sure the output is correct. But ultimately, it's actually running in the background. So this can save you a hell of a lot of time and effort and get you to a result much faster. So a good example of that would be you have your website, you've got, say, a form, and they put something in. The agentic AI is going to take that. It's now going to phone me up or send me a WhatsApp, and it can do this. Have a conversation with me that sounds like a person. Take all of the information I've given it, take it back into the system, mark it back against a set of a form or information I'm interested in, and give that data back to me. And maybe then do things with it. Maybe they're going to actually sign up for a service. The limitations of what you can do with this really are dependent on your imagination and on what systems you can integrate with. And at the end of the day, how much money you can spend, because obviously the more of these you do and the higher the volume, the more processing power, which means the more expensive it gets. But really, when you're starting out, it doesn't have to be expensive, and it can really save you a hell of a lot of time. When I say a hell of a lot of time, if you're using AI and you're not getting to a point where you're saving 10 hours a week, chat to me in Trenton. We can help you out. So that's literally how much time you can get back by utilizing AI in a very simple way. And then this is another platform that can be used to create agents. And this is really not to tell you about Agentforce, which is the Salesforce agentic AI platform. Again, you can build agents on it. But it's look at these numbers. So over $1 billion has gone into Agent Force in terms of investment. They've made 900 million in terms of the annual recurring revenue. So they're making their money back. And this is so important because until recently, investment in and revenue out were very, very disparate. So if we want to keep using AI and having the benefits, we actually need people to be paying for it and making money. And over 5,000 client deals have closed in the last year for Agent Force. That's pretty damn good for something that 3 years ago wasn't even a glimpse in most of our heads. But, because there's always a but, we need to think about things. So there's some critical considerations around what you need to know. And AI ethics is something that's actually so important. There are 6 pillars of AI ethics. They're sort of blended together in this slide. But they really talk about what it means to use AI in a fair manner. So the first is around biases and around fairness. If I'm using AI, is it going to give me the same result as it gives Trenton? If not, where's the bias? Where's it coming in? And we can't always screen for the underlying biases. We'll talk a little bit more around transparency is right there. Great. So part of the problem with a lot of AIs is you don't know how you get from A to B. Question goes in, data comes out. How did it make that decision? So being able to explain how an AI got to a decision, if you're getting to the point where you're using AI to make decisions, you need to be able to explain how it got there. This is actually one of the things that's coming in with new EU regulations. And for those of us in South Africa, we do tend to follow what Europe does. So keep an eye on what's happening in the EU in terms of AI from a regulation point of view, especially if you're in finance or if you're in healthcare, because it's going to have a massive impact on you. Privacy, obviously always a big one. We've got PAPIA in South Africa, GDPR in Europe, and this becomes very important in AI, especially if you've got staff members who are using AI and you don't know what they're doing, because without intending to do it, they can be putting proprietary information, personal information into third-party systems. And you need to be aware of that because although the risk is small that something could come out of that, there is a risk inherent in it. Job displacement, I'm going to talk a little bit more about in a couple of slides' time. But then control and accountability. One of the big things around AI ethics is saying that there still has to be a human involved. Very, very important. You can't just let AI run and forget about it. There has to be a human checking what's happening because AI can and will get things wrong. And we have to be very, very careful about what it's doing. So humans being involved, very important. If you do not have an AI policy in your business, if you do not have any kind of AI governance, that is something that you definitely want to be thinking about. Just a quick one on power and environmental challenges. So AI takes a massive amount of data. It's why NVIDIA is the most, I think, the most valuable company in the world currently. It's because they build the hardware that all of this runs on. There's massive energy consumption. The companies that are doing this are things like data centers and so on, are looking at ways that they can recycle energy. So we've talked about they use water for cooling. How do they recycle water? How are they bringing solar panels in so that they're not pulling energy off the grid? But this is still a big concern and certainly a focus, especially with in terms of the SDG goals. How do we take the power consumption down by utilizing alternate power sources and recycling? Just a note on AI in the African context. Most of the information out there that AIs are trained on is tends to be, well, depending which one you're using, global north-centric, and also tends to be Western-centric. There are AIs out there that are Eastern-centric. There are a few that are also in English, but in general, the information it is trained on is not African information. So there is a limit about, remember, garbage in, garbage out. So you need to just bear that in mind, is that you are like your potential to get more biases in an African context than you necessarily would elsewhere. Access inequality, very, very big one. A lot of people in Africa can't afford to use AIs. And massive governance gap, certainly as well, because we're following behind. We're waiting to see what Europe does before we do it ourselves, which means it can be exploited. And that's something that's also, especially if you're a business owner, you need to be aware of. Dangers of AI. I'm going to move through this very quickly because I know that Trenton has some cool videos to show you. The first is hallucinations. As I said earlier, AI likes to make things up when it doesn't have the right information. So it'll make things up and you're going to think that it is real. Likewise, deepfakes and disinformation. I'm actually just going to go forward quickly. So this was a deepfake photo that went viral of Trump being arrested. This is not real. This was made up, but it looks real. Another quick one, we've got the Pope here looking pretty Pope-looking dope. I actually think the meme headline was the dope Pope. And here we've got old Elon Musk with his tattoos that he doesn't have at a boxing gym with his punching bag. So just go back here. So whoopsie. So I think, Trenton, are you moving my slides around? Stop. Okay. So sorry. So we've got the deep fakes, we've got disinformation, and we've seen how this affects people. Job displacement, we're actually already seeing job displacement, especially in the technology industry. Microsoft alone let go over 10,000 people this year, predominantly because of AI. Personally, I'm predicting that they're going to hire a lot of them back, because for all that vibe coding is a thing, there actually is a very important place for developers. And likewise, like that applies to all of your industries. Cybersecurity threats, absolutely. AI enables a lot of cybersecurity, but it also prevents a lot of potential hacks and loss of human control. So all of these things are dangers that you need to be aware of. So take all the good stuff it does, but just bear in mind that there is the other side of the coin. And now I'm going to hand back over to Trenton, who's going to chat to you around some really cool stuff that's happening with humanoids. Thank you so much.
Alex, just thanks for that. Some really insightful information. This is one of the challenges at the moment is, I do come across posts on social media that have, icons that say that it's artificially generated. But essentially, what is your opinion on social media networks, in terms of if, ultimately we join social media networks, something like Facebook, to essentially see people that are part of, we went to school with, et cetera, But if all of a sudden, all of this content that everybody is uploading becomes fake, if you like, or artificial, where does that leave the social media agencies?
It's a really interesting question, Trenton, especially because there are so many sort of like AI comment bots built into the social media platforms themselves. So LinkedIn, Facebook, they've all got AIs that you can actually utilize. And these are things that you can use with agentic AI to automatically comment on different posts and engage. So it's fundamentally shifting how social media works. But the interesting part about what you said, this is AI generated, isn't it? There is a lot of non-AI generated content that is now being flagged as AI because people see an M dash or they see an emoji and they're going, no, AI generated that. So we actually are at the point that a lot of people, there's some AI stuff we can tell, but a lot of it we can't actually tell. We think we can. We're not that good. So it's definitely changing both how people create content, but from a social media agency point of view, it's a big risk for them. They've got to change how they're using AI and how they're advising their clients, because it's an evolving stage. So I don't think to answer this question, I would need a lot more time than we have tonight. Yeah. But it's any industry you can think of, especially the ones that are involved in creative industries. So your social media, your content creation, your marketing, those are being massively impacted right now. And those are certainly the ones that are the most, in many ways, the most resistant, because it's a threat. But if you can learn to use the tools and get the benefit out of it, there's actually no reason why you can't have both sitting side by side, both humans and AI, because that's at the end of the day going to get you a better result faster. But you've got to get over being, oh my God, it's scary, it's going to take my job first.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think, listen, my personal opinion on the creative industries as a creative and somebody from the industry is that it's going to crash and burn over the next 12 to 24 months. Very similar to when Napster came out and the MP3 came out, and it was super disruptive to the music industry. But as human beings, we are creative, and I believe we'll find our way working with AI. I think the other thing to also remember is that if you can prompt AI to create images, to write you songs, et cetera, and get lucky. But ultimately, it's all in the prompt. And if you're not creative and you don't have the creative spirit, you might get lucky on a few prompts. but to keep that consistency is what's going to be difficult. So I think there's going to be a lot of, as we call it, AI slop smashing us in the face for the next sort of 12 to 24 months. And then it will slowly start to figure itself out. But it's certainly a dynamic and scary time, you know.
Absolutely. And just to sort of, before I disappear again, some of the most creative people I know are the ones who are creating those amazing prompts. You forget that you have to be creative to get that good result in the first place, especially when you're moving into something like video generation, audio generation, image generation, even to a certain degree, text generation. So don't discount human creativity. It actually, you need it to get that good result.
Absolutely. Cool, Alex. We'll see you in a sec. Thanks so much for that. We are giving a course away, which starts in 2 weeks. It's an online course, 4 evenings a week. You will go through generative AI, language models, and unpack everything. There'll be practicals, breakout rooms. So we're quite excited about that. And we have a winner for this course, Nakedi Lelosa. You are the winner of the course. So well done. We will be in touch to get you registered and signed up for that. So one of the things that I'm super passionate about is basically embodied AI, as they can call it, the evolution of humanoids. I've been following, Boston Dynamics since they brought out Atlas 13 years ago. What has really accelerated humanoid development is the learning language models, because these things are not just robots on remote controls anymore. They can actually start to think and perform lots of tasks. So we actually have a masterclass on Future School TV specifically on humanoids. So I'm just going to dive into this because we don't have a huge amount of time. But essentially, a humanoid is a robot that is designed in the form of a human, arms, legs, torso. And the reason that we've developed these humanoids is because essentially we live in a world that is built for humans. So these sort of humanoids are able to fulfill lots of functions in terms of helping us do the mundane tasks, from your washing, cleaning, and then humanoids are different to sort of standard robots that you get in big robotics factories that do specific tasks. A humanoid is designed to be able to do many, many tasks. There's all kinds of jobs that they can sort of step in, from receptionists to elderly care companions, education assistants, retail assistants, hotel concierge. And we're starting to see them in a lot of places. If you look at places like Japan, where the birth rate is decreasing, the aging population leaves very little labor, countries like that are going to really embrace humanoids in a massive way. And just to bring it to life, this is an example of what they might look in these spaces and places. And, when you first look at these, it's a bit weird. And you sort of, is this real? Is it not real? But if you think about taking, a humanoid into the rural schools in South Africa, where teachers are, under-resourced. And I'm not saying we should replace teachers. I'm saying we should complement teachers. The same with nurses. A lot of our rural sort of hospitals and stuff are very understaffed. So humanoids could really improve the lives and the delivery of those basic services in those areas. And I'm going to show you a couple of videos, because seeing is believing. This is the Unitree G1. It comes out of China. This is $16,000. It is a remote version at the moment, so it's used remotely. But just take a look at the dexterity of some of the movements of this. I mean, just completely mind-blowing. I've seen this video so many times, but it doesn't cease to amaze me how dexterous these humanoids are. And then you take that and you put even the language models where they're at the moment, and you have something that is super capable of doing a lot of things. And if you're looking at Tesla's Optimus, or you're looking at about $20,000 to $30,000 a month, which may seem unrealistic to have one of these in the house. But if you think about buying a sort of medium-sized car, and you're paying 6,000-7,000 rand a month for a medium-sized car, and then you look at what you're paying your domestic worker, sort of between 10 and 15,000, you're paying this thing off in a matter of 2-3 years. It doesn't get sick. It can do multiple things. You can basically give it recipes for your favorite food, and it will create these recipes exactly how you want them. It will order stuff from Amazon for you. It can get deliveries. So there's no doubt that these are going to become really big. There's another one called Neo that's just come out, which is a bit more home friendly. If you look at the Unitree and you imagine 1,000 of those in a field, kind of an army of robots. There's a big challenge at the moment around autonomous robots and robots being able to make a kill decision in the field, the battlefield. Those are big sort of big topics of discussion at the moment. But these guys, Neo, have actually just released this robot onto the market. You can pre-order it. $20,000. You can put a deposit down. There is a service fee. I think it's $500 a month, which is quite high. But these are entry level. I mean, the Unitree actually have a similar looking robot to this, but it looks more sort of colorful, which is $8,000. So this is a whole industry in itself. I mean, once you have one of these humanoids, they work on actuators and all kinds of different components. They need servicing. They break down. So this is, as much as these will take jobs, the industry will also create jobs. So you'll see the difference in the next one, which is called Neo. This is a much more kind of user-friendly, happier, comfortable. They've dressed it in a tracksuit so it can walk around the house. So it's very different to the Unitree, but just take a
How's this? Perfect.
There is definitely something a little bit eerie about that. There's another humanoid by Figure that has come out with a sort of a 6-minute video of this thing spatulally, from putting dishes in the dishwasher to folding laundry to vacuuming, but with such dexterity, if you were at a distance, it would be hard to tell whether it was a humanoid or a human. So this is a massive, massive advance, and the language models are driving this super, super fast. There are, of course, questions that we need to ask ourselves, and I'm going to bring Alex back in for this because there are lots of differing opinions on where this is going. I think what's important to understand and unpack is how do we maintain our human element. I think what's exciting for me about this is that so we buy ourselves time by having AI fulfill mundane jobs. I mean, if you think of working in a call center, if you think of doing data capturing as a job, it's not a very fulfilling life. So if you take away those jobs, and the human experience becomes more important, how do we educate people about the human experience and the importance of the human connection with all of this crazy AI stuff that's happening? I mean, how do we get that into people's brains, Alex? How do we talk to people about that?
It's such an interesting question, Trenton, and I don't think there's an easy answer for it. So as I teach students from sort of 18, all the way up to senior business leaders on AI, among other things. And what I've noticed is that you've got the same sort of issues at every single level. People know that much, and they think they know a lot. So I think right now, the biggest thing is not so much talking to people about AI, but it's really educating them on what it is and what it can do. One of the things I absolutely love from a South African context is actually WhatsApp's built-in AI. That's Meta's AI based on Llama 3, if you've got any techies on the call. because it's accessible. WhatsApp is the most widely used social platform within Africa, and it's got an AI built in that is actually usable. You don't have to pay extra for it. So people have the access to the tools in ways that they haven't had previously, but they don't even know they have it. So I think it's as simple as saying, hey, have you tried this? And get them to do it. But also say, hey, have you tried this? But just bear in mind this. It's an ongoing conversation. It's not one that's going to be solved overnight, but it's a conversation we have to start having.
Absolutely. And I think this is the importance of this masterclass is, there are so many tools, but as long as you understand the different categories, then you can play with those tools. And the important thing is not to, learn to use 5 or 6 different learning language models. Pick a lane, get used to it, understand how it works, use language models to test the information. So if you've got something in ChatGPT, you can put it into Grok, and it can give you a different opinion on it, and it can sense check things. And I think that's the interesting thing is, the values of a Chinese learning language model may be very different to an American learning language model. So the whole point of this is to utilize the tools and to extrapolate as much information as possible and not to take everything as gospel. And I think that's the biggest challenge that people have. When the internet came out, everybody was like, oh, I've got access to all this information. I can learn all kinds of things. And then as we got further into the internet revolution, we realized that it was if the human mind isn't trained to be a critical thinker, a lifelong learner, the algorithm ends up shrinking our lens. And the same will happen with AI. So the more we understand the power of these tools, the more we are critical thinkers, and the more we actually challenge AI to give us the right answers. I think that is where the long game is,
Absolutely. I just want to pick up on what you said there, critical thinking. Obviously, AI in education, especially in sort of primary and secondary education, is a big talking point. How do we stop our students using AI? The answer is you don't. The genie is out of the bottle. This is the same whether we're talking at once we get out of school and tertiary. This is the same in business. The genie is out of the bottle. It's not how do we stop people using AI. It's how do we let people use AI in a way that makes sense, and how do we teach them to think critically about what they're doing and the results that they're getting. So that for me is such a fundamental change in the way we educate people at all levels. And I don't think that in general, the education, I'm going to say industry has caught up with that yet.
Right.
And I think it's going to be quite a long road ahead. But again, I've got students who are coming out of school. They've never used AI because it wasn't allowed. And I'm going, guys, this can make your life a lot easier.
Absolutely. I mean, the other side to this is, that there's the potential here that if we don't, on a macro government level, educate people about how to use AI and the importance of the human connection, that we could end up with a lot of very uneducated people. I mean, MIT recently did a survey where they took a control group who used ChatGPT, one that didn't. They put, probes onto their brains, and the people who used ChatGPT didn't spark the same neurons by any remote comparison to the people who are doing the thinking themselves. So, there's this school of thought that, if we don't use AI properly and we're using it to write everything and to say everything, that it could also make us, a bit stupid. So these are the challenges that we have at the moment. But Alex, thanks so much. I'm just going to quickly punt these. So this is a course we have coming up in 2 weeks' time. Please take a look at futureschoolai.africa. And then this is we're very excited about. Myself and Alex are running this in Johannesburg and Cape Town in March next year. This is basically an AI masterclass summit where it's 100 people max. Everyone brings their laptops. We have masterclasses on all different types of AI, including practicals. There's a whole wellness angle to this with yoga by the pool, sound journeys, and all kinds of other things. Because I think one of the important things we mustn't forget about AI is the opportunity it has to really change our lives and make the world a better place. From helping with healthcare to nutrition coaches you can build. It can give you advice on all kinds of things. And I think we're often caught up in the business world of being as productivity as possible and not thinking about how AI can make our lives better, which is certainly something that we at Future School AI are super driven to do. But I think that's it. Thanks so much, Alex. You still there?
Trenton, thank you. And thank you to everyone on the call.
Great. Thanks for being here. Have a great evening, everybody.